Hey, how's it going? Welcome back. Apologize I didn't get a stream out last week. Didn't have a lot of time in the weekend to work on it, and what work I did make, I didn't want to stream it. I was too just kind of trying to get what little I could done quickly. Streaming is fun, something new, something different, but it takes a lot of distracted energy to work on it until it becomes second nature. And sometimes I just want to make a little progress, and that progress is going to be awesome. That progress is something that's actually going to help the stream, because one of the challenges we've had before is when we're, you know what, before I even get into that, I should tell you who I am and what you're watching, because maybe you've never seen this. This is Experience Points. I'm Wormy, and we are making an AR shooter game for the Meta Quest 3, and we're making it using Unity. And I've been doing some AR and VR development for several years now as sort of a side job to my other job, and I enjoy it. I enjoy working on it. And so I figured this time around maybe we'd stream it, help share some of our knowledge or the experience of it, really, because look, I'm no expert, as you'll clearly see or have seen. But in this case, you can see what I'm doing. You can join in. You can ask me questions. You can interact, and we'll see what we do here. So anyway, the exciting thing is, what I've been working on before is how to make it so that the stream can see what we're doing in the headset. Previously, when we were looking at the game, it'd be very hard to show you guys what I'm working on. And the reason that is because, you're seeing it through a VR headset, through the Quest 3. I take this sucker and I plop it on my head. I'm connected here with the link cable. There's a whole setup of setting that up. I did not document all that because I had it all set up from previous projects. That's a thing for sure. But once you've got it all set up and you're working with Unity and you're working with the Meta XR development kit, basically when you go to hit play, let's see, turn that off for a sec. If you go to hit play, what'll happen is the link cable is passing the information off to the headset. It takes a good 15-20 seconds in this case to get situated. And then once I'm in, what are you looking at here? Well, if this was a different scene, do I even have this on? No, I have turned it off. As you can see, there's some stuff here, but you can't tell what's going on because I happen to have black objects, namely these little spiders and this sort of walking, this bipedal humanoid looking guy. I have a bunch of red dots. You can see those pretty well. But you can't see the pass-through. And because we're making an XR game, we want pass-through to show up. And pass-through is like the room that is beyond. That would be, my basement here. It'd be my room, my office. And because the Unity will render this as black, I tried screwing around. I made a background that would make it all blue, but then it disables pass-through. And then, it's not really that useful if I accidentally check it in that way for my partner Ryan. He would, he'd be frustrated. But Meta does have some technology to help us here. They have the XR simulator. And if you go to your package manager, if you install the Meta XR SDK, you're probably going to get this as part of it. But explicitly, there is a package called the XR simulator, and this is the package. I forget what the exact URL is to add it, but again, we had it in the project already. But you can find it on Meta's documentation, and I will show that at the moment because I believe I have that window ready to go. Nope, that's not it. Hold, please. There we go. Here at Meta's documentation, you will find there is a simulator section. I'm just going to find it. Where are you? Probably in build and test. We'll search for it. Simulate a VR. Bam. Simulate the Meta XR simulator. Now, in theory, this is pretty straightforward to set up. You just add the project, and then when you want to. So in this case, if we were going to just go ahead and turn on the simulator button, we just hit that, and then all we would have to do is hit play. And in theory, we're seeing a simulator. Now, the trick to this is that, number one, it will have this thing called the synthetic environment simulator. I guess I can briefly show you that. This is this room here is a sort of fake room that is as if the device has a room that they're playing in, and they've already mapped the room and the furniture. And so you can imagine this is the fake room that we're going to play in. There are ways to change this, although I don't know how to do that just yet. But then what's even better is you actually get a little simulator here, and this simulator is showing you what your game looks like if it was in that room. What's even more handy is you'll note I don't have a headset on my head right now, so that means I didn't have to put the thing on and do some stuff and take it off and put it on and take it off. You know, that's cool, and there's times where you should be doing that, but boy, iteration takes a lot longer when you do that. In addition, there are input settings here. Right now, we have keyboard and mouse, so if I go into this screen and I, kind of treat it like a first-person shooter, WASD controls, I can shoot things, I can move around, and you get sort of a little bit of a sense of what it's like to be inside this game, doing something in this particular fake room. With this fake furniture, you'll note that this humanoid here is clearly he was interacting with the mesh of the furniture, or like the geometry of the furniture. Again, I don't know all the details yet. I'm still new to the AR situation as far as how do you read this information, what's interacting with it and stuff. But the beauty is by having this all set up, we now can show you guys what it looks like, and my iteration cycles are now faster because all I have to do is turn on the simulator, hit play, boom, we're good. I don't have to pop it on and off. And the time to actually get it to play is quite a bit shorter. So I just turned it off. You can see the simulator froze. I'm going to hit play right now, and let's see how long it takes to get the simulator going. Bam. That's like 6 seconds, tops. That's pretty great. So the nice thing here is my iteration loop is going to be much faster when I do these very quick little changes, which is what you're always doing. As opposed to maybe 20-25 seconds to get it, linked, dumped onto the device through the link cable, and then hitting play through there. Now you can go a little further, and you can actually, on the controllers, you can actually set up so that the input comes from the controllers, from your actual headset controllers. If you go under settings, there is information here that tells you how to set up your connecting the physical Quest controllers, and this takes a little bit of effort. You have to install. There's a button here that appears first that says install a particular server, and then there's another tool which we haven't talked about too much called the MetaQuest Developer HUD, and I will switch over to that once I find OBS here. And the MetaQuest Developer HUD. MetaQuest Developer HUD is right here, and this guy will basically give you a lot more direct functionality as a developer to the device. You can install files directly, like you can install APKs that you build directly onto the device, so that's as close to sort of a real true installation as you're going to get. That is very different from when you just hit play, even when the simulator's off. If I just hit play here, I'm not actually building an APK and then installing it on the device. What I'm doing is I am basically using the link cable to sort of, at runtime somehow through some sort of magic, which I don't know. It is basically almost like live deploying something to the device, or live streaming to the device. And I think it's more like a live streaming kind of situation where the coupling of Unity running it and the device getting its input and putting it out. But all that's going to be a bit different than if you actually use the MetaQuest developer, build it to a device and then place it, as an APK that you install. You also can get a lot of performance information. It's pretty valuable when you get to the phase of debugging and trying to find out what's going on and just trying to evaluate the performance. We're so far from that stage right now, we don't really care. We're just trying to, slap some stuff on the wall and see what works. But pretty useful. And also just kind of tell you a bit about the device and let you do other things. At any rate, while you're setting up your simulator, you can take a look at these settings, and what they will do is they will let you it's funny, you guys can see that window and I don't know where that window went. Whatever, somewhere, if I ever find that window again. Streaming, it's a challenge. I'll just hit play again for the moment with the simulator on. So while when this device is connected, you install this little app, and then that little app, which is a little streaming. It's like a what do they call it? Like a headset server, I think it's called, something like that. It's called the XRS IM data forwarding server. So it's a data forwarding server. I can turn that back on. I'll shift back to this guy. This little app here, the data forwarding server. If you run that server, which the button from the settings will install it onto your device, and then from here you can launch it. And if you launch it and run it, if you look through the headset, you'd see that just a little box that says, "Yep, the server's running." And then what you do is you'd go back to your simulator, and you would say, go ahead and connect physical controllers. And when you do, then it actually is reading. Oh my God, look at that! I think a spider was on the foreground. That was great. When you connect the physical controllers, then it's actually reading the real controllers for the device in real time. But of course, the downside to that is, in order for the device to understand where the handset is, you're going to have to at least set it on your head, so that you can trigger the sensor saying you've got the headset on, and so that the cameras can see the controllers well enough to orient them in 3D space. So I don't know that I'll be doing that a ton, but I could see that as an intermediary when you're in a very particular situation and you want to practice in a room that isn't your room, but you want real controller interaction. Cool, that's a great way to do it. The other feature that I mentioned is the room itself. I don't know actually how to switch that room, but I know that you can. So it'll be interesting to look into that a little later, and when we get to the point that it's willing to try to change different rooms, that'll be cool. But for now, I'm just happy to get things up and running. I can see that we have a simulator. I can share it with you guys so you guys can see what I see, as sort of a test play of the game. And awesome. That's some great progress. All right, let's go back to look at Unity and see what else we've changed. Let me turn off the developer HUD overlay. There we go. So now I've made some other changes that are more like architectural changes here. Had a good meeting with Ryan. We talked about a little bit about this game and just starting to, again, kind of flesh out ideas and, really broad stuff. And I still feel like, as sort of the main engineer on this thing, I'm still trying to sort of cover the ground bases of any good AR project, XR project, to just get us all situated so that we have a good foundation to build off of. I have renamed our test scene. I call it a main scene now because we're going to have one main scene, and that one main scene is always going to be loaded. And that's important, as we talked about in the past, because inside of that main scene, I have something we like to call the player singleton. And really, we have within that the camera rig, the pass-through building block, and maybe, if there are other elements like controller interactors, things like that, that configure the controllers to work in a certain way, we're going to want to have them sort of always present. They're not something that's going to go somewhere else. The camera rig, for Imagine This, makes sense, where if you come in and you load the main scene, there's only one version of you in the game. It's you seeing through your eyes. You're the camera. And even though the scene may change, we may load different levels, we may have different things happen, and you can imagine this first scene is probably like a lobby or something very basic, just a menu or something pretty simple. You're going to want to keep that consistent. That is the piece that's going to be there the whole time. And If you were to load the camera again inside of another scene, then obviously things would go wonky. You'd be like, well, which are you? There's 2 cameras, there's 2 sets of controllers, there's 2 sets of everything. That's not what you want. You want one camera rig that exists the whole time. So we're going to solve that by having one main scene, and then we're going to have additional scenes that load additively into this scene. And that scene, for example, would be level test 1. Currently, level test 1 just has, some of the stuff around the building blocks around detecting the walls and the floor and a floating thing, and then there's like some occlusion building blocks. There's some elements that Ryan made which are about spawning these little spiders, and they get placed in certain places. Again, I don't know all the details of this yet. I just know this is what he was working on, and I look forward to looking into this a little more. But for the moment, it's the stuff. But you'll note that here, in fact, I'm going to delete that main because I don't need it anymore. In this scene, we only have the elements that are specific to that level. One sec, I'm just going to check in that change I just made. What are we doing? We removed main from this scene as it is now loaded additively into main. Great. All right. Pow bang zoom. Lovely. All right. So let's go back to our main scene. Now I'm starting to also kind of prefab up things. That's something that we do often. Prefabs in Unity, especially since they made a prefab revamp a couple years ago, they've become a lot more useful, and they're especially useful when you're dealing with multiple developers. Now we're only a couple of people working on this right now, but it's still important to break your objects up because it reduces the likelihood that you're going to step on each other's work. Scenes are the thing where they're kind of a unit that everyone works in. Every change you make, you likely be altering the scene, but we don't want to do that because scenes, in theory, they merge okay, but we try to avoid it. We've had trouble. We haven't really done a lot of scene merging. It doesn't really work out well. It's a lot better to not merge scenes. And instead, you kind of treat objects, you make smaller component objects, like prefabs, and then the likelihood that I'm going to work on, say, the audio prefab, the likelihood that he's also going to work on the audio prefab is much lower. And so we have a little more fine-grained control, whereas if everything was all in one scene with no prefabs, any change we make at any level would change the scene, and that would mean you'd have a scene merge again and again and again, and that's not what we want. Also, by breaking up our scenes here into a main scene and into a level test 1, we've already made a great piece of separation where now that we're less likely to step on each other's work. If he's working in level test 1, that's different than what's in the main scene, obviously. There's also things we need to do as we go forward, but we haven't quite figured it out or decided how we're going to do it, where the more we make objects and we think through, well, how's this game going to work? What's a level like? What's sort of the flow of the experience of the game for the player? Maybe when they come in and they play inside of a level, there's probably going to be one object that controls the level, and it will probably refer to persistence, where we've saved state maybe because you've played this level and you're continuing it, or maybe we'll refer to things like, hey, maybe these spiders and the spawning, or these elements, the wall, floor, all these building blocks, maybe these are actually going to be present in every level, in which case, hey, if that's true, we can either move that all to the main, and that way it'll be persistent no matter what, or we can make them a prefab, and maybe some levels had them, some levels don't. That will not be the case, but it might. We could take these things and we could put them in another prefab, and then add that one prefab to the levels that need it to do it. So taking the time to think about how your game is structured, it matters a lot. And in the beginning, it never matters. And then eventually you run into all kinds of messes. And so I try to preempt the mess and just be structured from the beginning. All right, so on that note, I've made a main game object. This game object has our main script. And this main script is basically just something that is meant to be like the top level control for the whole game. We're going to break down lots of layers as we go, but this guy is the big kahuna. This is the main thing we're going to think about. And so really, as we looked at last time, this ultimately is a singleton. The singleton is just how we like to do stuff for us. I mean, I'm not saying it's the right way or the wrong way. There are definitely flaws with singletons, but I don't know. It's how we do it. It seems to work fine. So that way, anyone who needs to can always get a reference to this, no matter what level they're at, no matter what game object we're working with. If they need the main, they can go get it. That's fine. And the main will probably have references, potentially, to other objects if they are not singletons, or some things are singletons on their own. And one guy that we've added here is the Scene Loading Manager. But before we dive into him, let me just recap a little bit of how we structure our objects here. The singleton is just a singleton class, very straightforward. It's just a mono behavior that it's intended to have one and only one of those things, and at any time you can call the instance of that object. You can also check to see if the game is shutting down. If it's shutting down, sometimes you'll see, I'll show you some stuff later where you kind of want to check to see if the game's shutting down to when you try to reference these things, because otherwise you'll get little errors on shutdown. It's not a big deal, but it annoys me, so I don't want to see it. So using that singleton, you can have objects where there's one and only one of them, and you know how to get to it. Another good example that we looked at last time was audio. We were making audio clips. And in this case, we have an audio manager. And the audio manager, we want anyone at any time to be able to ask the audio manager to play a non-spatial audio clip. So we can just say, hey, I want you to play a clip just so it makes a sound, whatever that sound is. So this audio manager singleton, we can call from anywhere and it'll work. I have an example of calling it anywhere in our gun. Our gun has a little projectile. We have a weapon pistol class. And this says, hey, when we're going to fire... Oh man, did I even do this even better? Hold on. Where's the pew pew sound? It might be in weapon base. It might not be in weapon base. Is it in the projectile? Where did I put it? Well, somewhere. When we fire the button, it shoots a little pew pew. It's definitely in a projectile. Maybe I didn't put it on the shooting of the bullet. Maybe I didn't do that last time. I think maybe what I did was I put it on the projectile itself. So let's look at a pooled player projectile. Here we go. So this is the class that I'm intending to wrap all of the projectiles that are pooled. This is the base class, and eventually we'll have all of them pooled, but you want basically a sound. Oh, look, I've got it right here. It was here. You have a sound when they get fired, and I can see why, you could make a decision. Where do you put the sound for the firing of a gun? Is the sound specific to the projectile you're firing, or is the sound specific to the gun? That's a decision you're going to make. You're going to decide, does that gun make the same sound regardless of the projectile, or does it do something else? I think for us, we're going to start in the case where the projectile makes a sound, because then we're probably not going to have a lot of different guns, and we're probably going to say, look, the projectile, if you load, if we take up one particular type of gun and we load, rockets into it, they make a different sound than if you load, little bullets into it or something. And if you were making a hardcore first-person shooter, you'd obviously make different weapons, because obviously a rocket launcher and a submachine gun are very different. Fine. For us, we're still early. We don't care. We're like, we just want to put the sound on the projectile so that we can swap the projectile that the bullet is using, that the pistol or the weapon is using, and then the sound is correct for the thing that you're doing. We also have a fire sound and an impact sound, because that projectile is going to spawn. It's going to fly through the air, and then at some point it's going to hit something. Probably a wall, if nothing else. And so you want to make a sound that is appropriate for that projectile to be with the projectile. So that's kind of how we organize it. So for us, let's see how smooth I do this. Poorly. That's how. We have this projectile, test 01, that's the one I was working on. And you can see that it is a pooled player projectile, so we know that it's one that will get pooled, which is good. It has this fire sound, and it has an impact sound. Delightful. All right, so the point to all this was just to point out that when you're working with, where did we even start this from? Man, I went deep into this. This projectile is fired. It plays a sound, the singleton. That's what we were looking at. So how does that work? When we fire this projectile, we eventually get to some point in the code here where we say, hey, if you have a fire audio clip, then I want to just grab the audio manager singleton instance, and I want to tell you to play the clip that is this clip that I'm talking about. Now, singletons have their drawbacks, but this is what they're good for. What they're good for here is like, I don't know where this thing lives. I don't know what it is or where it is. I just know that if I call it from this code here, I can fire it. I didn't have to have game object linkage, up 50,000 levels from the projectile to the gun to the player to the root of the scene where the audio manager is. I can just reference the one thing instantly and play it. We could have done this other ways. We could have made the audio manager not a singleton and stuck it in the main or something like that, and then you just get the main singleton and refer to that. We'll do that sometimes, but you get the idea. It's a way to refer to some particular, usually controller type object from anywhere in the code. All right. Turn down the audio just a little bit. All right, so where are we today? So let's go back to looking at what we're doing as far as this main prefab. So we have in it the audio, which has our audio manager singleton, and we have this convenient audio list, which is just a way to keep track of, if we have a bunch of different sounds and we want to have them referenced by code, that's a good way to do it. My testing object, I was testing the audio, and you can see this guy, all it does is when it starts, if I press a button, which we'll look at that in a second, then I say that I have pressed the button, and the button that I'm pressing is, I'm just going to play a clip non-spatially. Pretty straightforward. So to look a little closer at that, we have a controller input singleton. So that's another singleton we've made, and its job is to be like, I want to be the one script that's running where I can sort of stupidly listen to controller inputs from the device. And again, there might be different ways we go over this later. I'm not even working with action maps or any of that stuff right now. I'm doing the sort of dead simple, like meta documented stuff of like, look, you have this OVR input class that's available to you through the SDK. And they're saying, look, during the update loop, so every single frame, it's saying, hey, I'm getting if the fact that this button is down. Is it down? If it is, then this button, which is OVR button 1, and I believe I have a mapping stored. Hold, please. Oh, you know what? I think I put it in here because hey, I did. There's a link right here, which I put in the code, which is good for when you want to track. Oh, I'm terrible. I switched screens on you. When you want to look in the code, and you want to see some very particular reference, it can be very helpful to put that in the code. So that's what I did here in a comment. And if I open my meta window here, I believe I have, can I make a new type? I can, great. Okay, so here we have a reference to the input mapping. So this tells you exactly what the buttons are. So that's helpful. All right, what else do we got? We got let's go back to this guy. Maybe? Well, my hot buttons aren't working to switch my. So I had had the hot buttons wrong. All right, so we have our controller input singleton. So we have that guy. We have our testing audio. We just have a testing container. So we can put all our tests in one place so we know where to find them. We have this Unity Play Mode background colorizer. If I turn this on, it turns the background blue and it turns off pass-through. I don't want to do that, but it's here if I need it. And our next new guy, which I added off screen, is the Scene Loading Manager. And it can refer to a thing called a loading effect. We don't have that right now. But in theory, that would be some, full screen thing that you put up to obscure in front of the camera. We would probably attach it to the player's camera. Oops, I got your camera rig here. So actually, I want to we'll come back to that in a sec. I would attach the loading effect so that, as you'll see, when we're loading another scene, I could put something in front of you, like a little loading spinner or something like that. But let's go take a look at this guy. This guy is... I've moved around some of the code here as far as where to organize our things. I made a namespace called main. I'm kind of putting these sort of very big picture things under main. But here we have a scene loading manager, and its job is to load or unload scenes that are additive. When we say we want to load a scene, we're going to pass an array of scene names. We're going to start the effect. We're going to do an asynchronous loading of the scenes. Then we're going to tell ourselves that these are the scenes we have loaded. And then we're going to stop the effect once that's done. Now, it's important this is asynchronous, and we're again leveraging Unitask, a very awesome library for doing async await within within Unity. What this will do is this will basically say, look, we won't proceed to the next line of code until this has finished completely. So that's pretty awesome. And what is the asynchronous loading doing? Now we're saying we're creating a progress object. This is all part of like the C# multi-threading stuff and async await kind of usage so that you can keep track of the progress that's ongoing. And first I delay a couple seconds. I forget why I did this. There was a reason I did this back in the day. It's apparently to get you in TED zone. So I'm not sure that that's necessary. In fact, I'm going to cut it out for now. Yeah, I can always add it later if I want it. I don't think there's any reason to pause. And then what we go ahead is we tell Scene Manager, now this is Unity Scene Manager, not mine. And we say, okay, we'd like you to load a scene asynchronously, and Unitask adds, I believe it added the load. I don't remember if load seeing async is built in. I think it's built in, but Unitask will wrap it nicely, so that now we can wait for that. We tell it we're going to load it additively. Never mind, we're putting it to a Unitask right here. So by converting the asynchronous to a Unitask, it means we will sort of wrap it in the Unitask functionality on the way out, and we can pass along the progress object so that it understands, okay, here's the progress as we're loading. Now I'm not doing anything with that, but in the future we could report that. I think when progress is updated, which is going to happen here by saying there's a progress object, and it has a method called onProgressUpdated, which updates with its progress. So every time progress changes, this is going to fire a little bit. And I believe we should see that happen if we fire it off here. Let's see if we notice it down here in our log. I haven't looked at this to see what it actually output. Progress. Yeah, loading scene. It's very quick. It happens. It's probably got like 2 ticks, but it is outputting something. So if you had a lot of things going on, or if it was a particularly heavy scene, it might take longer. You should see that value update over time. But we're not gonna worry about that for now. That's a future problem. But at least we've got the hooks for it. And as I said before, we have this sort of start loading effect, load the scenes, stop the loading effect, and that way you can have something like a spinner or a full screen in your face if you want to load and cover it up, and then have that fade in and out or something like that. The other thing is we have an unload somewhere. Where did I put it? unload all extra scenes, we'll just take all the loaded scenes we have and just unload them. Pretty straightforward. In fact, it occurs to me, oh, here's a wrapper for loading a particular level. I should probably unload all extra scenes first, because if we did have extra scenes, we would want to unload them. And we'll await that because that is an asynchronous method. Let's see, loaded scenes, yep, goes through some, yep. So we would unload everything if there were any, and then we would load this. So that's probably a good idea before any additional levels we were going to load, we could do that. If we had another level, we could load that scene, and this is the name of the next level. So it's a way for us to additively load and unload scenes so we can keep track of it, keep our main running, load the other stuff as we go. Delightful. Okay, so that's the stuff that I've added in between. There was one other thing that I wanted to point out. My simulator wasn't working the last couple times I tried to use it, because I wanted to show you guys that. And it turns out that after digging around, there was a little bit of a trick, which was on the camera rig. There's an object called the OBR Manager. And this OBR Manager has something called dynamic resolution. If you have dynamic resolution enabled, and if these values are not 1, so I think you can either disable it or set the values to 1. I have done both of those things. If that is not the case, then the simulator chokes and it doesn't work. So I don't know if that's a temporary bug or whatever, but that was the situation at the moment. And it took me a while to figure it out, but once I found it, that was the magic. And by disabling dynamic resolution and changing the scales to 1, now we get the simulator to work. Sweet. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to take the camera rig and I want to put it inside of our player singleton. I like to think of the player as like the player is you and your camera and all your business. And so I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy in here, and I'm actually going to take this prefab, this added game object, and I'm gonna apply it to the prefab player singleton because I want it actually inside there. I'm also gonna move the pass through into there because I think we want that in there. Expand any more than that, and this pass through over there, I don't even think we're using it, but I'll put it in for now. Okay, so now I've sort of put more about the player deeply in here. The object pooler, I'm not sure if I want it to live on the player or not, but it's fine for now. Because when you have your gun and your gun shoots, at a minimum you want to shoot bullets. I actually think the object pooling should live out in the main, because other things besides the player are going to be doing object pooling. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, is there a good way to move this? I think if I move this, it's going to choke. Yeah, I got to open the prefab. Okay, so we're going to go in here, we're just going to cut it. We're going to go out and we're going to paste it inside of the main as a child. Cool, that didn't work. Cut. Oh, no, it doesn't seem to want to work. I mean, I can just redrag it, so I guess I'll do that. It's fine. And let's go back into the player. We'll save that for the moment. We'll kill this one. And now the player had a reference to the object pooler. We're going to pull that out because I don't want the player to reference that anymore. Yeah, I'm not even doing anything with it yet. That's fine. What I am going to do is I'm going to put it inside of the main. I don't know if I need a reference to it, but may as well have it. And let's kill that reference because I don't need that anymore. I never remember to do that, but hey, I remember this time. Alright, so this should recompile, maybe. I have errors currently. What did I screw up? It won't recompile because player signal doesn't contain a definition of object. Oh, somebody else is calling it. It's fine. It's the weapon pistol. Yeah, so somebody is calling it. Delightful. So, let's fix that. What was that? Weapon pistol. So we're actually going to get this from the main.instance.objectPooler. And I can kill this player reference for the moment, I think. And look at all these other ones I'm not using. Yeah, the editor will add stuff sometimes, and then I don't realize it, and we're not using it. It's not that big a deal, but in theory it would be slightly faster if we're keeping that tidy. I'm sure I have a million bad habits. Look, nobody's perfect. Alright, this player singleton is good. He doesn't have the reference to it anymore. Our main now wants a reference to the object pooler, so we're going to go ahead and hook him up. Whoops. Why are you unhappy? Oh, it wants the child. I see. That's just a container object I made to like keep the hierarchy looking nice and structured. That's fine. Alright, so now we've updated our prefabs. Main has an object pooler, player singleton does not. And I'm just going to hit the game, and we're just going to make sure everything still works. Clear out any errors. Let's fire it up. And what is this? Is it this one? Nope. This one? Yep. Alright. Looks good. Looks like it plays. I am pooling. Those bullets are pooled. When Ryan added the enemy projectiles, those are currently not pooled. Alright. Great. Let me check in that. I guess I can just... Alright, so we're going to move the object pooler into main. And what else did we do? Removed the 2-second delay from the scene loading. We might have put that delay in so that you had a beat for the transition to happen. I think that's actually what that was, but it's fine. So I mean that at some point when we had, you're going to load a scene and you kind of want to put like a fade, you want to fade in some sort of visual over your face. I think we did that so that it would look nice while it was loading and then unload, and I think we put that little delay check that in. All right, so my next mission for today is pretty straightforward. The next thing I want to build that I kind of feel like is good groundwork is I'm going to need an in-game test panel. When you have the headset on or you're in the simulator, you're playing, you need to like do something. You need to like press some buttons. So I think the nicest way to do this will be to try to leverage the built-in developer kit and use some of the building blocks here. And I don't know if you can see, but I opened that by clicking on the little that window down here. It's odd how OBS won't stream a lot of these sort of sub windows, but that's fine. I'll try to remember to knock them for you. But in the building blocks, they give you a lot of very handy things. You can just drag into the scene, and then things just kind of just work right away, which is great. And in this case, what we're going to want is some poke interaction. I want to make it so that your controllers can poke things when you sort of, touch them, either with your hands or with the controllers. We intend to use the controllers the whole time, but there might be a future where we go to using your hands. In this case, it'll just work either way. That's opposed to ray interaction, which is imagine that the screen is further out in front of you and a ray will light out from your hand or from your controller into the distance, and it is something that you can then interact with the UI that way. I don't think we'll need a keyboard. Now, it's been a while, and I haven't worked a ton with the building blocks in ages, so let's just see what happens. I'm gonna put this into the player singleton. I have dragged a thing. What did it do? Or what did it not like? I thought all we do is... maybe it added it to the scene. It did. Okay, so when you add a building block, it puts it in the scene. It doesn't really care if you're in a prefab. That's fine. We can move it afterward. So now that this poke interaction is here, let's take a look at it. Let's go back to the scene here. What do we got? Oh, this must be your fake hands. And a surface. Clipped plane surface, eh? Oh boy, I'm gonna have to dig up how we did other stuff in my other game, because I don't remember. Or we could go read the documentation together. How fun is that? Well, let's see what we get here. Do I see a surface in here? Oh, that's it down there. That tiny little white box. All right, let's go look at Unity for a second, and we'll see if we can figure out where that guy is. Let's go to the scene view. Hey, buddy. You're a tiny little... You are a poke interactable, and I can poke you. I don't know what that script does. Like, I see that's how it gets identified, and it's like, look at me, I'm special, but... Interesting. The other thing we can do... Well, you know what? Let me go look at the document. There's two things I've done this. There's three ways we can go about this. One, I can go grab it from an old project. Yeah, I suppose it'll work, but... And it's probably a lot more further along, so that is actually highly... it'll get me up and running quicker. It won't tell you guys much, but it'll get us to where I want to go quicker. Then we could look at the documentation, I suppose. That's a better way to do it. We'll do it together. I'll continue to, firm up my understanding of it. But it does get a little annoying because it's going to be a little slower, and I'll probably be reading. But whatever. It's pretty chill. And then the the other thing we can do is we can open a sample. Let me see if we have one here. Does this have the samples? I think you installed them. Here. I'm going to import these samples because we don't have any. That's probably useful. I'm definitely going to install these, but before I do that, let me make sure I've got nothing else checked out. I did just make one scene, and it was, oh, it was adding the poke. Let's get rid of the poke for the moment. In fact, what I'll do is I'll reset this. Discard these changes. I'll let the scene reset. Great. Okay, so now we're back to where we were. Whatever we did, we didn't do it. But I am going to install these. Oh yeah, baby. This is what I actually want. The interaction SDK samples. Do both of these. Editor tool might be useful too. Can't hurt. All right, so now if I look at these, I should. You guys couldn't see that. Sorry, I forgot. You can't see the package manager window when I open it. So I guess I'll show that just to make sure you guys can see. So in the package manager, after getting the interaction SDK, if you then click over here on samples, then I imported the example scene and the feature. I imported all three of these. I'm trying to see if there's other things. Maybe the core SDK is probably worth getting these just to have them. And now I believe if I open the scene, okay, so I'll show you one other tool that I love called Open Recent Scene. That's actually just something that's in the asset store. It's called the Open Recent Scene, and it's in the asset store. I believe this is it. Yep, I love this asset. Whoever made this, Bosnick Tools, you're delightful. It just makes it so I can hit like Control-Shift-O, and I can very quickly open a recent scene. Love it. That's it. That's all it does. But it makes me very happy. It's a fast shortcut. In this case, I haven't opened these scenes before, so I'm going to have to go in the long way. So we should have here under samples, we have interaction XDK. This is the version number, and we have example scenes. Now, I believe I've looked at this before. Let's open this guy. And in our scene here, we got this crazy living room, and we have all this interaction of a bunch of different like buttons here. And for this, I am gonna put the controller inputs on, because then I think you guys will be able to see the controller inputs a bit cleaner. So let me do that. Oh, this is making me realize it's important to add, you know, what is my goal here? My goal is to basically add a panel like this. Like, see this panel? It's just a panel with a bunch of buttons on it, a bunch of way to debug things and hit them. Because when you're in the game, you're going to want a panel that we can reference to just hit debug things all the time. It's pretty common. The killer is, in the simulator, it's going to be hard to look at that the right way and hit it with your hands because I'm not using the real objects. But let's see if we can give it a shot. I will go to VR capture, turn on, oh, you know, I didn't add the, hold please. I will add the MetaQuest developer HUD to this as well so that you can see when I'm doing this. We're going to fire this up. This is the data forwarding server. Once this has been enabled, then now when I go back to Unity and I have the simulator enabled, if I hit play, the simulator begins. Let me turn off the developer HUD. The simulator is now running, but I can go to the input. Nope, it was under settings, under connect, and I can while my thumb is holding over the device, because I don't want to do that, I can say connect physical controllers. And there we go. Now my controller is actually connected, and I'm seeing it move in space, which is what I want. So it's a way that you guys can see when I have the headset on. If that's not complicated, I don't know what is. Let's turn this way, and I believe I can. Can you? Hold on, I gotta WASD my way down there. Can I get lower? No, I don't know how to get smaller. Well, we'll make do. Can I touch it from there? This is going to be a nightmare. There's no way I can do this. No. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the simulator, and you guys are just going to watch through you play. All right. And now, I'm going to kill the mic thing. Okay, now, can you see what I see as I'm looking up in order to look out my nose hole to see what the streaming window sees? Yeah, let's see, it looks probably fine. Alright, so now, if I turn, I have this window, and you can see I can press buttons. Well, that's cool. Turn pass-through on and off. For the moment, so you guys have a nice background. I have scrolling, I have buttons. This is like a nice UI canvas that I can work on. I think I like these. I've added nice ones. Oh, that's pretty great. Big fat stupid button. I very much like big fat stupid buttons. I think that's what we're gonna make. Well, the test pen might be this because that's pretty handy. Touch. You know what? I like this button right here. It's pretty solid. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna look and see what they did here in the scene. And we're just gonna do what they did. I want to pick and choose. So I liked these middle buttons. They're nice. So which are you? Oh, let's go to scene mode. Oh, we are in scene mode. Let's copy that whole thing. Let's go back to main scene. Just make an empty thing for now. Temp. Paste as child. Nice. There they are. They exist. Where's me? Actually, let's put this at 0, 0, 0. Okay, good. So I can see now some buttons. Great. And now let's confirm something else. In this sample, I think the key thing here is they add the poke interactable. Let's just see if it works. Let's go back to main. Let's see if we can just add a building block here for the poke interactable. Where's my building blocks? Let's just grab it. Just see what happens. Alright, we're gonna go back in the headset and see if something happens. sitting on it. It was right there. It's like down at my feet. Okay, that's not good. So let's get rid of that. Also got spiders everywhere. Let me do another option here. What can I do? Well, what are they doing in their scene that I'm not doing? They're using sort of the big old camera rig. This is their interaction object that has hands and controllers and VR hands. Well, let's go read the instruction manual on the poking, because maybe that will tell us a little more clearly. Turn on. Huh, this is an old tutorial. They're not telling you just like, here's how to add it to your thing. Now I could keep digging down to deeply understand what goes on. I know a little bit of this. Poke interactor defines the point transform to be used for computing both the hovering and selection via the eye surface intersection. Great. So in their case, let's say they're talking about the controllers. The left controller has an interactor and it has this poke interactor. Right? This is the poke interactor right here, and that's referring to the transform, which is the poker location. Fine. In our game, when we added this in, there is a model and there's a visual. But more importantly, there's this, what does a poke interactable? Oh, did it add? Bingo, look at that, it did add it. That's cool. It added this interaction element, which added a hand and hand interactions. Right poke, there it is. There's the poke interactor for the right index finger. But I'm not using hands. I'm using controls. So let's go back to building blocks. Maybe the controllers themselves. Look at that. They've even got a button mapper. It's kind of like my class, but its own thing. Controller tracking. Good lord. All right. Now how to like neatly tuck this in. It's like it adds it, but is it adding it as intelligently? Let's try to redrag the poke interaction. Boy, a thing that is interesting is when you add it here, it's adding it to lots of layers because obviously it's trying to. If I hadn't reorganized things into sub elements, then I bet it would all be nice and flat or something like that. But because I have reorganized it, oh boy, it found it. You know, it found the right layer to add it because it found where other sister elements were. But this is kind of messy. This is meant to be the thing that you press. So if I go back here and I look at this, yeah, and this is also at my feet here, so I'm going to put a reference object in here just so we have something to see. And it's just going to be a cube. And we'll make it at scale 1, cool, and let's put it like slightly in front of us and like up a little higher. Let's actually make it kind of a funky shape here. Great. Just so I can tell it differently from other things. We'll do this in simulator for a sec, just so that I can see where that thing ended up. Fine, okay. Seems like a reasonable place. Now I'm gonna put my temp. Just call debug buttons instead of temp, so I know what I'm looking at because I lost track of it already. We're gonna put the hover buttons at a relative 0, 0, 0. Look at that, it's already better. And now the debug buttons are already like at a higher location, so I can find them, and I'm just gonna kind of stick them over here so that I can find them when I'm looking for them. Great, and then that's fine. I don't need to be perfect with it. All right, now I'm just gonna run the game again. Let's see. Okay, I do see my things, but they're way over there, and I can't reach them, so I need to move that about half the distance closer. want the controller interactions. Is that a thing they've got here? Let's try something. Just make a new scene. And let's see what they would have done if we did it for nothing. You drag in a camera rig. You drag in controller tracking. What if we added poke interaction? I think I saw it add controller tracking. So let's just look at the right hand. Nope, let's look at the only handing. I guess they really want ray interactions for your hands. Even though the demo had poke. If I go back to that demo, right? So they have in their camera rig, these are the controllers. So let's look at the right controller. The right controller has an interactor, and this interactor has a poke interactor. This poke interactor says, I'm talking about the right controller, there's a bunch of settings, there's whatever. Kind of just want this. The essentials, the poke, and they have a controller poke interactor. Let's just try to add that. I think in their building block example, they add hand objects, but they don't add controller poke objects, which is kind of a bummer. That's what you would want. So let's go back here. Not there. Player singleton. My rig. Oh, and it sees and has like the little, this is the little dot. All right, well, let's put it on the controller then. Good gravy. This is where the difference between their building block and their samples is a little confusing. Like, this is controlling tracking, right? And this is all the different possible controllers. But this is an OVR controller helper. This is a controller anchor. Let's look at the structure they've used in their example. Poke interactor, I believe it was called. There are two controller programs. So what do they have? OVR controllers, a right controller, geez, let's go back to main, and then we're gonna open this other scene additively. We'll see if that makes any sense. What is that? Oh crap, where's that thing? It's under sample zone. Okay. In the rig, they have an interaction thing. In the rig, they have an interaction thing. These are similar. In this interaction, they have controllers. They have HMD, sorry. Hand interactions. In these controllers, they have a left controller and a right controller. And the left controller has a visual for the prefab that is the thing. They have the controller interactor. This is the poke interactor. This controller, this thing is just best hover interactor group. So this is a thing that is saying of all the things under me, of which I have one, who is the best? And it does some sort of aggregation and selection, so fine. This left controller has just other things compared to this. What the deuces? Like the 87 different models of, hand controller that exist. So I get that. So this is just like the model and its requisite bits. Turns out, not that simple. It's interesting how these anchors are even different than the tracking space, right? Like there's the tracking space and they've set it up so they've got, here's where the left hand anchor and left controller, all the stuff. That's in the tracking space. This OVR interaction is its own little beast. Or maybe just copy it. I think that is the equivalent to this thing. Yeah, because look at that. Building block interaction. This looks the same as OVR interaction. Yep, because now you have HMD and we're missing OVR controllers. So let's copy that. Paste as a child. Oh, I think it keeps references because I copied them across. So let me close this. data source is like, I don't know what's going on. What's the camera rig? It's this. Right? Looking for a camera rig ref. It's a camera rig, so I should be able to drag that in. What the hell was that data source? Why will that not update? IOVR camera rig ref. Oh, because this guy, because the top level object has the camera rig ref. Okay, I see. They pass it down one more. I get it. Okay, so back here to this data source. What are your data sources? Don't know what that should be yet, but let's say for this, this should be the object above it, which is this interaction. Tracking to world transformer. Let's go back here and again, we'll additively load this. Was already there. Cancel. Yeah. All right. Data source. This is OVR interaction tracking to world, which is this other thing. Okay, fine. We can do this. So that means this guy. Your data source. There you are. You need to refer to this. Hey, look at that. Boy, this is a mess. There's no way this is the right way to do this. So here's a poke interactor. Poke interactor refers to left controller. Left controller is the left controller we're talking about. Left controller refers to the data source and the left controller. And the data source refers to this thing. And then this guy, when I look at the other one, he has a none here, so I'm fine with that. Alright, so let's unload the scene. And this was the left controller. Let's see if the left controller actually works. Now look at that. He does look like he has a poke interactor. And he's working. Well, look at that. We did it. Okay. There's a lot of silence. Maybe I can explain what I had because it's pretty complicated. So what I was doing is I'm referring to the example scene to try to deduce how they structure their like inputs, right? When the building block is added for poke interaction. Sorry, I have that wrong. Yeah, no, when I added that building block for poke interaction, it automatically added this building block interaction object. This had specifically these two components, the OVR camera rig ref and the tracking to world transformer OVR, which also has a camera rig ref that points to itself. And these were preset when I added it. So first, let's go ahead and add these to the player singleton. Beep. Okay, now, in addition to that, there are these controllers, the left and right controller. this controller object was not there when I added the building block for interaction. I had to add it, and I did it by copying it from the other scene. But let's see, what is this thing? Like, these are basically, this is just a game object that is being the container for controller interactions. And this has a controller script. It's fine. Which references this data source. So they're sort of hooking up whatever a controller is to the data source. The data source in turn needed to reference the correct camera rig and tracking to world transformer, and those had to come from this high level camera rig and tracking to world transformer that we added already. So that was important. If those weren't hooked up right, it sort of doesn't know what data to send to the controller to track where it is and to do the right thing. Once that's done, now there's a controller interactors grouping object, because they're going to assume that later in time you will add multiple interactors like a poke and a ray at the same time. And this is the poke interactor, which uses a location and makes a thing and has a little poke location dot and all this kind of business. So it adds those little elements. And in fact, there's a visual that's put here for this prefab, of which there are many of these, which I think is duplicated because up here in our tracking space, in our left hand, we have a left controller anchor, and we have controller tracking left with all of this jam in it. So I actually think I want to remove that. Maybe we'll just disable it for the moment. And let's see if we still get our thing, because I think it's actually duplicating. If you look at the scene, you can see how I'm actually doubling up all the models. I don't think we need that. I think that is provided here already. So let's save that for the moment. And it's interesting that this controller anchor is just an anchor. It's just nothing. It's almost like this thing is just providing anchor points. Not sure what that's about. Does this have a controller helper? This has the controller helper that's breaking down. Yeah, so I think we're duplicating all this. So let me do this. I won't put the headset on, but we'll do the trick of hold the headset with your thumb over it, and I should be able to see the left one still. There it is. Okay, so that's working. And so that means I can essentially get rid of both of these. Yeah, because this already refers to this prefab and it's got all this other stuff. So let's use this one, and we'll nuke this one, because I think I added it when I was doing things. In fact, I can tell because this has been added, and we're gonna get rid of this right controller anchor, controller tracker. Get rid of that. So I don't need that. So that's those. And now the right controller has the similar problem. This data source needs to refer to the building block for interaction, which has the camera ref, and the building block for interaction, which has the tracking to world transformers. And I think that should work for that guy, and now we'll prove that. I see controllers, and I see little dots, and I see if I press buttons they work, and if I press buttons they work. So okay, excellent. That is a fine answer. So we can track the controllers. If we wanted to, we could disable those controllers so that we don't visually see them, but I don't really care right now. And so now what I want to validate is that all the adding, hand tracking left and right. So this is if we didn't have controllers. Which I think is the equivalent to, this already has hand interactions right here, which has left hand and right hand. So I think this is also duplicative. These guys are duplicative. going to turn these off. And we're going to go in. And I'm not going to pick up the controller. And we'll see if our hands get seen. And whether our hands will work to press the buttons. I probably have to make, I probably have to update some things, but let's see if we just see the hands. I mean, it's controlling the gun, which is funny because it's on my wrist. When I pinch, it's firing, so we have something watching for that. It doesn't see my hands at the moment. My headset's running low too. That's not great. This session's gonna end soon anyway. Alright, so we'll put these back on for now. And if I do that, let's just see if I see my hands. I do see my hands. So I will hide these for the moment because I'm not really caring about hands right now. But it's good to know that those are what you need. And my suspicion is these, for the hand interactions, I believe we saw a hand poke, we saw a poke in here. Right poke, left poke. Oh, maybe, you know what? These are all building block added, so they needed the building block hand tracking left and right. So actually, I'll bet you this works. We're gonna test it. Bingo. Okay, so I realize you guys probably can't see shit in here. That's funny, but hey, it's fine. The point is that did work, and it worked because it was the building block hands and the building block poke interaction by default worked for hands. It did not work for controllers, so I had to add the controller ones. Fine, but this means I can add this prefab to add a game occupied to player singleton. Add a game occupied to player singleton. Beautiful. So now player singleton is no longer overridden. And if I go into the player singleton, I should see I've got all my junk, I've got hands, I've got poking, I've got all kinds of stuff. Boy, that was confusing. But hey, we now have a thing that's on the left that you can press. I think I'm going to wrap the stream up here. We have a very initial set of buttons that press, even though they don't do anything, but it's a good place to start to begin to build out a UI for the left side that you can poke with either your hands or the controllers, which will be useful when you're in the game and you want to add just some debug functionality. So there we go. Thanks a lot for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to tune in next time. It'll probably be another Saturday or Sunday morning. And, talk to you later. Take care.